All right, so let's get this thing started. So I'm Eric Wile. I worked for Sony Online when they were still relevant. Sorry, I have to use that reference. So I spent some time in the industry working on EverQuest, Star Wars Galaxies, PlanetSide, and pretty much anything that Sony released during certain years. So now I'm kind of still in the game industry, but I'm more tabletop now than I am video game. So that means anything, I guess. There you go.
Cool. So my name is James Riding. I'm a senior level designer at Sony Santa Monica, currently working on God of War. I've been in the industry for almost 10 years, working on a bunch of small studios first. Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, a Cartoon Network game. This is my third job, and I really don't have any new intel for you guys about God of War, but I'm really just here to talk about kind of the industry and my experience.
Cool. My name's Gabe Denning. Most famous as an author of the Warlock Holmes series, but for 4 months, I was a localization editor at Nintendo, and I honestly think I've been invited here as the cautionary tale about the video game industry and sort of its pitfalls. I can tell you.
Oh, you mean how it grinds you up and then
out and spits you out in 4 months' time? Yes, indeed.
I got lucky. I lasted 5 years.
Oh, did you? That's like a veteran. You know, at Nintendo, you did have a lot of people
Nintendo
who were
and
career.
Sega. But then Sega got spit out as well.
It's a fun industry, and just know it can be a little brutal. So that's why I'm here.
Not a little. It's a lot. If you work in the art department, it's a lot. You know, for some people, it's a little if you're in production. But if you're in the art department, it's a lot.
And that's what you did, art?
Yeah, animation, tiles, background. Back when Sega was around, I used to do. You were a jack of all trades and good at none. So you ended up doing the tiles for the 8-bit backgrounds, and then one day you have to clean up animations. The next day you got to work on, okay, we're going to dump all these dinosaurs on you, but then you got to clean up Jurassic World the next day. And then it's like all of a sudden, can you do this for us for this game real quickly? This ain't on my contract. Oh, please. Okay. Stuff like that. I'm Russell Barba. I've worked in video games, on animation, you just heard, and I do photography, and I'm basically a jack of all trades and good at none for art for the most part. 'Cause I keep jumping around. I never stay consistent. But yeah, that's what it is. You guys are all excited, nodding their heads.
Yeah, no.
We should just fill all the extra seats with bob heads, and then someone shakes it, so then they all move like this.
So it sounds like all 4 of us are big house then.
We're in a prison?
Currently.
Well, yeah. So yeah, did you guys start indie or?
No, it wasn't indie. It was, I would say, almost like double A. Like we would make, kids game win in a year. So I think in 2 years at Papaya Studios, we made 3 games.
Oh,
so
nice.
It was 36 people, kind of a 2 game at a time type of scenario. So it wasn't indie, but it wasn't.
But it wasn't
big
huge.
house.
And I can't say that about Sony Online.
Yeah.
Not even close. That was AAA.
Yeah.
So, large scale. I mean, considering the first game, EverQuest hit 600,000 players. So that's nothing to sneeze at.
No, that's not small.
No, not back then it was, especially at those dial-up speeds.
Yeah. Okay, anybody out there in the industry, or are you all wanting to be in the industry? Hands up, who wants to work on video games?
Raise your hand, Robbie. That was your high school thing.
Aww.
I had to help him with his high school paper.
Oh, cool.
And then tell him everything he knew was wrong.
Well, I mean, what do we want to tell these guys about the industry? There's...
Find another job like James Doyle.
Well, you know something? I do think that is one of the things. I came from one industry and into another industry where you better be working there because you love it. Like, don't expect to get rich and famous.
Yes. So I would definitely say that having worked on small games and big games, it is something that you only want to get into if you really love to do it, because you're not going to get super rich, but it will also be very rewarding, because I remember when I shipped my first game and I went to the store and I bought it myself because I'd worked at GameStop and I had always wanted to ship a game. It was a very memorable moment. I get to meet fans who've played games that I worked on, or even games that I never thought anyone would play, like Punch Time Explosion. I've met people who enjoy that game. but it is definitely a lot of work. It does not come easy. It is not easy to get into, but you will meet probably a lot of talented people. You will meet some untalented people. Like every job has people who aren't good at them.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to have a passion for it. It's not.
Passion carries you through the tough times. That's the big thing. You're going to go, oh, God, I hate this. I'm not going to make my milestone. But then you go, I really enjoy this job, so I've got to do it. I can't let my team down. And it's the passion that pushes you forward, not the, oh, I'm getting a paycheck at the end of the week. That's what you do at GameStop.
And James touched on it. Like I only briefly worked on games. I have one video game title to my credit. You ready for it? Style Savvy.
Was that a Barbie game?
Almost.
It sounds like it.
It was a Nintendo game where you start up a boutique, a fashion boutique. And what's funny is it's actually a decent game. All of us were like walked in, we got hired, Nintendo hired like 10 new people, and we're like, woo, we're finally in! 4 months before the world market crashed and they fired the entire department. And we did this one game, Style Savvy, and it was so funny because I think all 10 of us were like, yes, we're in! We're working on what? But it wound up being kind of a charming game. It surprised a bunch of us. And I still every now and then, like, I have that sense of ownership when I see it in a GameStop or around, or someone like mentions it online. I'm like, man, I could tell you stories about Style Savvy. And that is, for me, I think the reason I keep gravitating back towards these geeky and creative jobs is because it feels so good to see your stuff out there in the world. Like the stuff you love and you sort of poured your heart into. When you meet people who like it, it feels so good.
Well, I think the big thing with it, too, it goes back to, is for a while there, it went through the flea market phase and borderline dumpster, and then next thing you see, people are actually worshiping it now. Wow. I hated working on that game.
Right.
5 years of my life was put into it. It made me cry. And you're going all of a sudden, people are going, that's a really good game, I enjoyed it. I remember hating moments of it. But people enjoy it, and it made them feel good, and I think that's the important part sometimes.
I had a demoralizing day with books. Was working on book 3, banging my head against it, not making much progress, and I went to Barnes & Noble to pick something up, like get a gift. And I walked in and I found my book sitting out front on the staff picks next to Princess Bride and Howl's Moving Castle. And I just had to sit down for a minute and just like, oh, thank you, somebody. And it's those feelings. Like if you're gonna work in these creative industries, that's why. That's so anybody with stars in their eyes and fame and fortune, I don't know if we can help you. But anybody who just wants that feeling of like loving geek stuff and making geek stuff for other geeks to love, you're in the right room.
And the funny part is, there's stuff that you're going to make that people are going to hate too, and you got to deal with that too. There's going to be that shovelware you're going to be assigned to, like Barbie's underwear closet or Barbie's My Little Pony. You're not going to sit there and go, why am I working on this? And you're assigned to it, and you're going to have to stumble through it. But then you're going to get one day go, hey, you get to work on Jurassic Park. Sweet.
I don't know. I just feel like I've been talking a lot compared to the amount of time I've actually spent in the industry.
Funny part is you said you weren't going to be the one to talk a lot.
I know. Why I thought not? Because you guys actually have jobs.
Well, you seem to be the loquacious one.
Yeah, I always have been. So, how about we play this game? How'd we get in?
You want to go first?
So I went to the Art Institute in San Francisco for game art design. It was 14 years ago, so everything has changed. YouTube has changed, so now you can learn a ton of things that you can do on the internet. Game engines, Unity, Unreal Tournament, all that stuff is available. But the good thing about going to school is that you meet people and you also kind of like get forced to do things you don't want to do. And you learn how to like do things well that you're not necessarily always passionate about. And so I graduated, and 6 months later I got a job in Los Angeles at a small studio called Meteor Games. And this was during the MMO crave, and everyone was trying to make MMOs. So I was a level designer, making this big open world with a small studio that didn't really know what they were doing. So they hired a bunch of kids out of school, me included, and all of us were kind of flailing trying to make this game that eventually went nowhere. So a year and a half later, they closed, and through my connections at that job, I landed my second job at Papaya, where I shipped the 3 small kids games in 2 years until that studio closed. And then I got my job at Sony because now I had shipped titles and I've been in the industry for a while. So rocky road, but persevere. That's my industry story.
I guess I'll go ahead and do mine. Mine is probably one of the most unique stories. When I first had the passion to want to be in the industry, I was very young. We're talking Atari days, right? And I moved out to San Diego to help my sister move, and I was applying for everything. Cox, Rockstar, Midway Games. I mean, I played for everyone, and then all of a sudden, I heard that Sony Online was hiring. And I was like, well, it wasn't Sony at the time, it was still Variant. And I applied, and the job I applied for, ironically, was tech support. Because it's like, okay, I just want to get in, and I want to become an IT engineer. That was like my goal, right? So I get in, I basically, actually I should say that it wasn't immediately get in. So I had an interview. They did call me in, they liked my resume or whatever, and they gave me this like 20-page test. They're like, okay, so we need you to answer these questions, and some of it was about just IT stuff, right? And the other was stuff about, I had no clue about like, what is DirectX? It's like, what the hell is this? I don't use this in IT, what the hell are you talking about? So they liked the interview, and then 6 months later, no, it was 8 months later, they called me back like, hey, you got the job, can you start? I'm like, I'm back in Colorado, but I didn't want to say that. I was like, yeah, I can be there tomorrow. So I get out there and I work my way in the trenches. I mean, I did tech support. I really hated it. It convinced me that I did not want to be in that department. So I finally started applying for projects that came up. So they had this thing where like, hey, we're doing this in-game stuff. You'd be a game master, you're helping with in-game stuff. So would you be interested? I'm like, yeah. So I did it. Got into in-game, and they're like, hey, this project's coming up where we need you to work on this. And I'm like, I just kept applying for anything that they'd throw at me. And then finally they're like, hey, there's this big thing that you're actually going to be in charge of. You're going to do some development. We'll help you with it. And that's where I basically got into development. And I thought it was weird because like, I actually wanted to be an IT engineer, and somehow I'm in development. How did that happen? But no, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was just weird because I just applied, went in the back door literally, and became a designer.
Huh.
This is weird.
It's weird. Do you want to?
Do I have to?
Well, no.
Okay, I guess I will. Okay, I started out at Modesto Junior College, basically the hometown of George Lucas. Ooh, the school he hates. And went through their computer program, and they had, at that time, one convention in almost 100 years, the Colossus Con, and I happened to be working on the Amiga. If anyone remembers what an Amiga is.
Fondly.
Oh, wow.
Fondly.
And I built a stop-motion animation with it called Brandon Justice, about a space cowboy who was made from a Ken doll, a rocker Ken, who was fighting a space alien, which was from the Captain Power toy line, which was only a 12-inch doll versus a 3-inch doll. But they look the same size when you scan them in one at a time. You can scale them. And so the guy they had the game design, the art director of, he was at Visual Concepts at the time, working there, and his buddy, who was working as an artist, and they saw my project, and they go, wow, would you come in and go for an interview for this? I go, sure. I still needed 2 semesters at MJC to get my degree. And so I went and applied, and next thing I know, you're working in Visual Concepts, which then becomes amalgamated into Electronic Arts as time progresses. But then I started there, then after a while, the art director, the guy left, and then I went over to Sega with him. And that's where pretty much I was most of the rest of the time, in the Sega CD department. If anyone remembers what a Sega CD is.
Yeah. Again, fondly.
And that's basically it. I got the luxury of working next to the game testers, so I know their horror stories as well, which parallel your horror stories and your horror stories about playing stuff you don't like. And their big thing is, if you want to be a game tester, you don't. If you love games, you'll learn to hate them so much because you got to make them crash over and over and over in the same spot. And if you can't get it to do it, you got to make it do it. You got to make it do it so then they can document it and document it. Everything has to be documented. That when they get home, we never want to see another video game again.
You know what though? Every game tester that I know says that, and then goes home and plays video games. You know, like at Nintendo, you'd get like this room of people who by the end of the day were so sick, and they're like dragging their way out of there, and sure enough, they'd stop in the lobby and play video games on their way out, and then go home and play video games.
Well, when you got Virtual Fighter in the front lobby where you can play for free, who wouldn't want to sit there and play a stand-up? You know, it's like, that's my boss. I'm going to beat him up.
Yeah.
That's what's the greatest thing about stand-up Street Fighter. You can walk to the liquor store, far away from the place, and go, that's my boss. That's the guy, that's the producer. And then you go back, I feel so relieved.
Yeah.
And you continue about your day with a smile.
My path in was really weird. I started as an actor. If you ever watched Whose Line Is It Anyway, I did that sort of stuff in Orlando and Seattle and Disney. And and I wrote, because honestly, that's not acting, it's writing. If you have to go up in front of like 200 people every night and make like 8 satisfying stories, and believe me, they will let you know if you're doing a good job or a bad job, you get used to generating a lot of content. So I wrote a lot, did plays. One of my good friends and roommates also did, and wound up working at Nintendo, Rob Hyrett. He's one of their main localization editors now. And I was always just in awe. I'm like, Rob, you've got the coolest job. You know, these games come over from Japan, and they make no sense. And the translations they send make no sense. My very first day, I got this list of characters. They're supposed to tell you, you know, like, build a character profile for this person. And you can't see the game yet, so you don't know much about them. You know, you're supposed to invent a character, and ideally they'll tell you, you know, gender and race and age and, you know, things like that, and you sort of like, you try to get a good stable of characters to make this game satisfying. And on the very top of my list, there was a character, and they had only 3 words: loneliness, lonely wolf. And that was all. You know, and so you're like, okay, I don't know how old this person is, or lone wolf is what you're trying to get across. Okay, we'll start with that. So anyway, he did that, and I did it briefly too, and I was sort of brought in for a weird reason, because Nintendo knew they had a funniness problem. They got cute down pat, but, you know, but they had this problem where they were, you know, funny as the natural sort of pair it with cute, and they were not making their jokes hit, and they knew it. And the reason is they were being really safe. They didn't want to offend anybody. They, you know, because they're corporate, they can't. And so Hyrick, almost unbeknownst to me, was lobbying for me, because he even brought some of the Nintendo people to some of my shows. He was like, Gabe is funny. He can help us fix this. And so sure enough, when they expanded the department, I applied. And, you know, was put there to sort of fill a comedy gap, but never got to, because then everything imploded. So there are other ways in to the industry. Like, if you have some weird specialization that for some reason they want, they might come get you. I did actually go to them, I mean, but, you know, Hyrick gave me the nudge. Which is the other lesson: know people in the industry, because they do, I mean, it helps. Book industry is the same way. I honestly think I got my agent when I went to a con, and like, I'd been talking with him online for almost 2 years. And when the day I finally met Eddie and sat down and had coffee with him, and you could just sense this wave of relief rolling off of him, like, oh good, you're not crazy. Okay, you know, like, you're an actual, like, sane person. I think we can deal, you know. So it's in, you know, video game people know video game people, and they hire the video game people they know. So be one of those people they know. Go out where they hang and meet them. Is that bad advice, or?
That's good supplemental advice. You also have to be good at something.
Yeah.
So like, if you're an artist, then like make good art and put it online, and make a variety. My old roommate is an illustrator, and he kind of drew one style, and I'm like, bro, if you're only applying for places that do that style, you need to have a variety, a nice calendar or catalog, of artwork. So that is also very helpful. The last 3 level designers we've hired, I did not know them at all, but they had really good stuff. And it's like, you can't deny this person has good stuff. We interview them, they talk a good game, they know what they're talking about. That's also part of it. Like, I don't think it matters what part of the game industry you want to go into. You still need to be able to talk games, because your designers appreciate when you can talk to an artist and say, like, you know, kind of like this game, or this game does this, and we want to kind of have that aspect, and they can understand it, is key. So.
Or the other option as an artist, you have the systems all in your cube. And then if you don't know what the hell they're talking about, you go get it that day in the afternoon, load it up, play it, and then call them back in and go, is this what you wanted? And they'll go, yes. You guys can sit there in front of each other and go, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for, can you do this? And you're going, that's awesome. You got the systems all set up, you got everything set up, you're very professional in how it looks in your cube. And that helps out too.
Once again, a story from another industry, but the day I sold this series, you know, I got a call from Titan Books, and we're on the phone talking about it, I really just read the books, the stories I'd parodied, and Titan's on the phone saying, hey, yeah, you know, we're buying 3, but we're interested in maybe the whole Holmes canon. Like, you have a plan for that, right? You could do all 60 stories, and me going, yeah, like, absolutely. I really hope it goes that way, and success, let's plan on that, and hang up the phone, like, oh, God, honey, we're going to Barnes & Noble right now. I have so much reading to do. So, yeah, do that work. Familiarize yourself with the canons you need to familiarize yourself with. Good to hear that you guys are hiring talent. That's refreshing.
Well, another piece, I guess, since I'm the game designer of the group, who basically has been the multi-hat, one thing that I know a lot of studios will look at, please have a working demo. I mean, this is one thing that always irritated me when I was at Sony. It's like, you say that you are good with Unity, or you say you're good with Unreal, but you have nothing to present. Okay, that's great and all, but if you don't have something that I can look at and say, hey, let me test this thing, let me look at your mechanics, let me look at your lighting, let me look at your texturing, let me look at something that I can physically do something with. Whether it's from an art portfolio to an actual working demo, whatever it may be, have something ready. You know, be prepared to present, because when you're trying to apply for a job in the industry, the big thing, yes, passion is huge. If you have a big gaming passion, that is the key. But if you have nothing to back that up, they're just going to look at you like, well, great, you have passion, but where's the product? I mean, you have this portfolio with like 2 pictures. What am I going to do with this? I mean, it's cool, but where's the beef at? Where's the meat? So if you're going in with the perception that you want a job in the game industry, dude, you better bring your A+ game. Because I'll tell you what, there's many people in the industry, whether past or present, that have been in your guys' shoes before. Trust me, I've been there, where I basically was like, hey, you know, I've got Sony on my resume, that should get the door open. That's not a guarantee. Even with the contacts I have in the industry, it took me years after I left Sony to even get anyone interested. Because it seems like once you leave the industry for like even a year, so much can change in a year. It's incredible. Because, I mean, a good example, I remember a day when City Heroes was on top of the world.
Yeah.
Where's City Heroes now, guys? It's gone. Okay? Well, another good example. Did you guys ever see the game Motor City? Does anyone even remember that game?
I don't, actually, and I'm...
Okay, so you do remember EA's, you know, attempt at Need for Speed Online, MMO. Okay, so yeah, where's that game today? It doesn't exist because there's so much change in the industry. It happens like, I'd say, what, every 6 to 9 months roughly? Some new tech comes out, new software. I mean, think about it. Unity was not available 10 years ago, okay? Unreal was not available to the public. If it was available public, it's like, what, $5 grand just for the license? That's not including the server piece that you need for it. So if you think about it, so much has changed, even since I've left the industry, that even though it's somewhat relevant, but really if you're not on top of stuff, it's going to be hard to get back in. So my big thing that I tell everyone is like, look, contacts are great. Get to know people in the industry, that's a good stepping stone. But have passion and have something that's viable, that is a good economic for that studio, and basically drive home the point, the reason why you're applying it for that specific studio. So let's say you're applying at Blizzard, right? You're not going to mention like EverQuest, are you? You're going to say, hey, I play Worlds of Warcraft, and here's the things I like about it. Or here's the thing that really gets me engaged about it. I mean, you're focusing on that studio because that's what you're playing. Does that make sense? All right.
I think this is a real good, if you want to do something artistic, like if you want to create, if you want to be a content creator, so does everybody. You know, so yeah, you know, do have something to show. Be a creator before someone hires you to be a creator. You know, like engage that thing that you love, practice it, get good on your own, have a body of work you can show. There's a saying from books and stuff, writers write. Doesn't matter if someone's paying you to do it or not, writers write. Go write something. And then when the day comes when someone says, hey, I'm interested in you, you know, you'll have something to show. And then the other thing, we talk about playing to your industry. I keep giving out of industry advice, but here's how I got published. It's really hard when you're a writer and you're making content, the stuff like, I hope someone buys this, I hope someone publishes, get it out there in front of the geeks, and you're always knocking on doors and basically saying, hi, I'm someone who says they're talented. Here's some stuff that if you want to read through as proof or not, will you take a financial risk on me? The day that I finally got really picked up was the day that I realized, I made a joke, Warlock Holmes. He went home and started writing it, and then realized, you know something, actually, Sherlock Holmes is just going into public domain now. And it hasn't been out of print since 1890. It's in print in 180 countries. There are literally millions of fans in place for it already. And overnight, I went from knock knock, hi, I'm a writer, do you want to take a chance on me? To knock knock, hi, I'm a writer with a newly trademarkable version of the second most profitable public domain character after Santa Claus. Would you like to take a chance on me? And suddenly, many more doors were open. The panel that I'm not doing here, but that I do at many cons, is mining the public domain for fun and profit. And
funny part is, I've heard that a lot about mining public domain. That's what makes Marvel and DC scared right now, is the fact that they're close to losing key things like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, even Disney with Mickey Mouse. They're afraid of losing all these characters due to public domain, is because they're all hitting their 100-year mark soon. Yeah. And they don't want that to happen. That's why they're trying to push that public domain thing back further.
And kind of losing. I mean, I have faith that Disney money will eventually carry the day, but right now we're right on the cusp of a whole bunch of stuff rolling in. H.P. Lovecraft, I swear, is the next geek bait that's rolling in public domain.
And it will be successful.
Yeah, yeah.
Considering there's already a new video game based on Call of Cthulhu already, and they're just like, didn't you guys just have a game recently? Now there's another one.
Yeah, I know.
And as long as it keeps with the same mechanics of that game, I'd be happy, because it's like, there's not been a lot of good horror games that actually have a mechanic that really scares you to play.
No, you know something. For Cthulhu, I almost have to go back to Sanity's Requiem for that to get like a good 2 a.m. creepy game to play.
Yeah, anytime that your factor of survival is based on your heartbeat and make sure you don't go into cardiac arrest, that's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah.
It's like, all of a sudden I'm scared. Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Mine would have to be Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
Because when the beat stick is far more important than the gun, that's really very important. Because in most of the Cthulhu stuff, it was the beat stick that won the day over the guns.
Well, and then Fatal Frame.
Never played that. I could never get a hold of it.
It's hard to get your hands on that game. But I mean, the fact that a camera is your only weapon, it's like, wait a minute, I got a camera? Really? And I'm fighting ghosts and, oh no, that's too much. But good game, mechanics are great.
We had a question or comment.
Yeah, because I don't think I've played a game that scared me as much as Fatal Frame.
Yeah. Ooh, okay, well, you guys just sold me.
Yeah, the mechanics are, it's something.
I don't even know that one. What's the platform?
What was it?
PlayStation.
Xbox, I think?
Okay. Huh. I'll have to check that out.
It's old school. Very.
Oh, I don't mind old school. I'm old school.
It's like Manhunter old school.
Should we take questions?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. did you guys, anybody out there with questions?
I make fursuits. Do you guys have any tips for character design? Character concepts and stuff? Because I want more
What do you want?
friendly designs that aren't like aggressively complicated.
What do you want to do with the suit?
Where?
Okay, that's the obvious part.
But I mean, more fan-friendly designs that are easier to make at home.
Study Disney, because Disney uses simpler lines.
Yeah.
Disney tends to use softer things. Look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles art, Eric Larson and Kevin Eastman, because the Turtles have gone through so many. They started really aggressive looking to what they are today, really nice and friendly looking, and they're approachable characters. Compare what we saw in the comic book to the '90s cartoon, which I considered was horrible, because I read the comic book instead, the black and white. But even what they made so children will be associated with the character, that's fan friendly. A lot of times it's just understanding how simple shapes work, how shapes complement other shapes, colors complement each other, because colors also create emotions. So if you're going to make a bright red thing, it's going to stand out in a room. But if you want more of a soft, kind of quiet character, you're going to maybe go with blues and so on like that. It's just stuff like that, just studied guys who actually do this, because Walt Disney was a master of this stuff. It's nice to look at the new stuff, but if you want to look at anything, look at what Walt did, the first 4 films, because Walt knew how to sell. Walt actually, after Cinderella, hated every product after that, because he knew all the shortcuts they did. He wanted no shortcuts. He wanted everything perfect. So look at what Walt did too. Study a lot of Walt.
Oh, by the way, Cinderella, public domain.
Yeah.
I'll also add to that, because I actually know a lot of cosplayers professionally.
Yeah.
Is that what I would go ahead and do is, like, I know, what is it, Ivy Doomkitty's here, right? And she's a professional cosplayer. I would actually interject with her and basically say, well, I have some ideas, and could you help me? Because most of the professional cosplayers on the circuit, I mean, they do this stuff professionally. So they have an idea because they're already designing, characters like for Overwatch and what like that. Now, granted, I don't know if she does the furry stuff at all, but I mean, I know there's a little bit of difference between the two communities, but I mean, it's kind of the same.
There's a lot of overlay.
Yeah, there's a lot that they tie to each other, but I would almost get, opinions from a cosplayer personally.
And weird pet peeve, my other job, I'm an X-ray and MRI technologist. And I always like characters that look like they have realistic or functional anatomy, like build from the bones up, every muscle has 2 attachment points, and here's why, and when you get a character that looks biologically like they make sense and are interesting, I may be in the minority, but that always makes me sort of key in on a character. Yeah. You can't be cool to me and be completely unreasonable, unless that's the sell,
Unless you're H.R. Giger.
Yeah, well, even Giger though, like Giger's anatomy is, it's this sort of insectoid slash, like exoskeleton slash skeleton hybrid.
But I'm just talking about looking at his other work. The stuff that functions we've seen on film, because I was surprised to hear that he was also a designer on The Predator.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting. But we see that. But if you look at some of his others, we go, there's no way this thing could stand in real life.
Oh yeah.
Visually, it's flat art. It's great. But when you're going to put it into a real world, you're going to have to go through and figure out, like I said, the skeleton, the structure, and everything, because 2D is always different than 3D. That's why.
Another question?
Yes. Is he the voice of Kratos?
No.
Yes. You guys are currently working on God of War 5. Am I right?
I am.
Yes. Listen. I know you're not allowed to talk about personal stuff, or not allowed to leak personal information. But when y'all done with God of War 5, by any chance, is Santa Monica Studios gonna move on to PlayStation All Stars 2?
I don't know. That's not the kind of games that we make.
I know
We do have some people who worked on PlayStation All Stars there, So that would be very exciting.
Yeah, but when they shut down Superbot Entertainment Studio, where did the studio move to? Because I already know Santa Monica Studios owns the rights to the PlayStation All-Stars license, but not the characters. Is there by any chance y'all gonna actually give it a second chance in a sequel with Crash Bandicoot and more characters?
I don't know. I know that some of those developers moved to different studios. Some came to our studio, but that studio has kind of disbanded.
Okay, but y'all still hold the rights to the game, though, am I right?
Like Sony does.
Sony
like
owns
the
the rights to
umbrella
the
of Sony, yeah.
Yeah,
But
which-
Santa Monica doesn't make that game.
Okay, then, but the thing about it is, do you know if there's ever gonna be a sequel, or is it still a mystery even to this day?
It is a mystery even to this day.
Hey, just tell them there's a fan out there praying for another.
Yeah.
I will pass. I have a really good friend of mine designed 8 of the characters.
Oh, which ones?
Well, Nathan Drake was my favorite one. That's what he did.
What about Fat Princess and Sly Cooper?
Sly Cooper? Yes, not Fat Princess. But I will tell him that you're a huge fan.
Okay,
Aw.
hey, this is my last question though. A lot of people got pissed at your company, at the Superbot Entertainment Company, because when it was making DLC characters, Dirk from the Legend of Dragoon got canceled, and he was a highly requested character, and that pissed a lot of fans off. Do you know why they canceled Dirk?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't at that studio.
All right, then,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, I was wondering if you could offer any tips on getting into a AAA studio, like
Yeah. What kind of? I guess what part of what department? What part of the studio?
like for 3D models and stuff like
Yeah.
that, 3D art.
So for 3D modelers or artists, you just want to make high res stuff and make a variety. So make your animated type characters, make your realistic characters, like have a nice big range, and also put some characters in engine. So put them in Unreal, put them in whatever you kind of get your whole hands on, and kind of show that range. So the character artists, we kind of have your sketch concept artists, and then we have people who work with who do the 3D aspect. We have both, but we're very specialized. Not a lot of studios do that. Sometimes it's the same person who does both.
Yeah.
So if you have, you can make Batman, which is fine. Here's my high-res 3D model of Batman, but here's this high-res model of something that I made up, or I'm inspired by my father, or whatever. You know, so you can have both sides, just to kind of have that nice range.
Okay.
But for artists, it's a lot of your work. Just have good work. Always be working on stuff.
Any other questions, guys? Seriously, speaking as someone who was trying to get into the industry for a long time, having smarts like this, like in a room with you.
I feel so important now, the smarts part.
Yeah.
So I have, as far as industry goes, like when I'm thinking of, so companies like EA had just dissolved Visceral Studios, and Visceral was working on a Star Wars game that is now canceled. As far as the artwork and all that work that went into that game in production, who ends up owning that? Does an artist who worked for Visceral, and are they able to take that, or does EA own everything that was being worked on in that studio?
I think we'll go first. Go first.
So what ends up happening when a game gets canceled? In most cases, when you sign your NDA with your studio, you don't own the studio. Now, granted, there is stipulations and certain things that, let's say, the gray areas, if you will. In those cases, those sometimes will say sneak out.
Yeah.
That's the improper term, but I mean, in most cases, the reason why you signed that NDA in the first place is not only to protect your studio, but at the same time to basically say, whatever you created during the time at such studio, we own the rights to. So, as I said, if you happen to take something home, which I'm not going to recommend to anyone, because if you move studios or your game gets canceled, it's best not to, because for whatever reason, if the studio decides to take assets back that you walked out the door with, that could turn into a bloody mess really quick. So,
It definitely depends on the studio and the situation. So I feel like at Visceral, there's a chance that that game may go to somewhere else. So they don't want people just walking around with their art. Santa Monica, we canceled the game between God of Wars, and they let those artists use the art for their portfolios. So it just depends.
Nintendo was so brutal about this.
They just jealous.
Well, yeah, and that seriously, there were a couple of other writers there, and they wouldn't work on their books at lunchtime because Nintendo's license was so horrible. They could then make a claim to owning your book. You know, like, hey, you were on, especially a paid break. Like, you were working on that on a paid break on Nintendo property, writer that we paid you to write, then that's ours. You know, and they were brutal. So, I mean, it's really good to let to let artists, like, here, you made this, you can represent yourself with it. You're not profiting off of it. You can just, like, say, here's what I can do. That's generous, that's cool. Companies should do that.
But I've heard that too from other stuff, is that if you're on company time, it's company stuff.
Yeah, we're paying you to create, you did, great, that's ours, we paid you.
Hey, buddy, it's not their fault. You'd probably be the same way too if you was a third place loser all the time.
Well, just if you're gonna go into this as a creator, careful.
Because they'll strip mine your ideas for to become their ideas, and they don't have to pay you anything at that point because they got you under contract. And that's the big thing, is that contract says once you put your name on it, you're theirs from whatever time and it's not whatever time from 9 to 5, it's whatever time your contract starts all the way up till it ends. So if you're hired for like 100 and some hours, during those 100 and some hours working contract art, everything you do is theirs because you're their property. They're paying you to be their property.
So anything on the side that even if you
As long as they don't catch you, it's okay. That's the best way. As long as they don't catch you, it's okay. But if they catch you, they can actually say, you know, you did that on our time. We want that.
Yeah, like if you go out to your car and you write something on your laptop at lunch, they probably don't have a leg to stand on. But if they ever came back and say, oh, did you render this on our computer? You know, like in our studio, you, wow, that is ours. You know?
It's the same way colleges get around a lot of stuff. It's like stuff you see in commercials. It's technically yours, but because you use their equipment, they can use it as theirs. Facebook's been doing that a lot lately, that if you put something on your thing, they own it. That's why you put it on a site like DeviantArt that says it's yours, then you put it on theirs, because it's there first. That's why.
Yes, this is probably something you guys wasn't aware of about Nintendo, but in the country of Tijuana, Mexico, there was this one Hispanic man who created a Metroid 2 remake. It was a remake of Metroid on Game Boy, and it took him 9 years to create it from the ground up with some friends, and then he published it on the internet for free. He didn't even try to profit off of it, and a lot of people loved it. And then when Nintendo saw it, they attacked him with lots of envy and lawsuits, telling him, if you don't take this game off the internet, we're going to sue you to the ground. But instead of Nintendo suing this man and trying to threaten him with lawsuits, why didn't Nintendo just use their brains and give him a job? Because he wasn't even trying to profit off the game. You can even look it up, the story's just ridiculous.
Because it took 9 years for them to do the game. Because technically the game should be done in 2 to 3 years. Usually when they hire you, you're hired to do 5 years worth of art in 2 years. Anything that says 9 years, no, you're too slow.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the reason Nintendo ain't as popular as Sony, well, I mean, nobody cares about Microsoft, but the reason they ain't as popular as Sony is because they don't listen to their fans, they ignore their fans, and they really thrifty with their properties. Like, they make them in the cheapest ways possible.
You see positive and negative stories about that. One of my favorites. Phil Foglio did a bunch. He did art for Magic the Gathering.
Oh,
he
he's
did
great.
comics
I've
and
read
Dragon
his
magazine. You know the story about him and Kaya?
Kaya
Foglio now. So
they got divorced?
no, basically
Oh my
she
God,
was
they
his
got-
pirate. He was famous as an artist,
Phil
and
and
someone
Dixie.
started copying his style, and got a little bit of fame. And there was a day where they were at a con together, and so he marched down the row to meet his pirate to say, hey, you've been jacking my junk. Like what's up with that? And she was quite cute and charming, and they're married now. And they actually, the comic book girl Genius, they do together. And
They started Phil and Dixie with Dragon magazine.
yeah, and she, like, her style, she was so good at copying his style, they can work on the same panel, and you can't tell who did what. I mean, And there are many. That guy who did that really cool X-wing anime got hired, by Disney. There are many people who use fan art, things that aren't for profit, but are just because they love a thing and they want to get it out there, who do get attention and do get picked up because they're good.
So I'll piggyback on that too. So it is another good way to show off your art is to make mods of games. So in my first job, we hired a guy who had done a bunch of Unreal mods, and it is a good way to show off. You're like, hey, this is what I can do. This is something you can actually play. Just to kind of dovetail that into industry stuff.
Well, if we want to add to that, I mean, let's look at one of the most prolific, I guess you could say prolific, level designers of all time, American McGee. He was working on Doom levels.
Oh, yeah?
He's one of the most respected game designers I know. And the thing is, though, I've played some of his Doom maps. Dude, he's got some skills. But that's the thing is that, I mean, even from my standpoint, we actually hired a guy at EverQuest, or to work on EverQuest, that actually wrote some stories, just like EverQuest family. We hired him because he wrote good stories. So, I mean, if you have something viable, and I don't care who the studio is, it could be Valve for all I care. If you got some content that they like and it's really good, there's a chance that they'll listen to you. I mean, you have to be willing to actually cross that line. Because look, I can help you get to the door, guys. Any of us could, actually. But you have to be the one to open it. You know what I'm saying? We can get you to that door, but it's up to you to open that door to actually walk through and say, I want this. I need this. I don't care if it pays me $15 an hour. That sounds horrible. But, I mean, you got to be willing to take that chance because in the game industry, they're not looking for people that want jobs. If you want a job, go work for Cox. If you want a job, go work for the government. If you want something that is a passion, that's why you get in the game. Period.
I think we're going to let some other people ask questions.
All right, then.
A little bit of a two-part question. First part, do you guys, now that the God of War franchise obviously made a lot of major improvements, more popular now, do you ever try reaching out to like major celebrity actors, like some from Game of Thrones, new show Vikings? Because I know you kind of broadened the appeal, having those people in, like Norman Reedus, he's in the newest training, and other actors that are involved. Have you thought about trying to reach out to them and trying to incorporate them into the game?
So this is not under the things that I do, but I know that Corey does have some people in mind, actors in mind, when they're fleshing out the character and they're doing casting. Part of it too is that the bigger the named actor, the more expensive they are. And I prefer to get some of that money to me. But just kind of.
That's what this is going to play Thor in the next one.
But I think that the guy, I can't remember his last name, but Chris, our current Kratos, he did a fantastic job, and I think he will be very pleased with his work. So.
And then it's kind of just a general question to all of you, just as fans and enjoying video games. So pretty much as fans, one thing I noticed is that with the increasing video games become more visual, they all look pretty, obviously. The thing I noticed is that the better the graphics get, the lesser the writers become. Like back in the day, it's like, I don't know, it just seems to me it's like writing used to be better in games. That used to be more focused, whereas now it's like, it's getting more and more rare where you have a game that just has the balance of both. So for instance, Last of Us, my personal favorite, Witcher 3. Because these are games that know how, they have the graphics, but they have the story, they have the detail, they have depth, they have things that keep coming back. As fans, do you worry about that? Do you worry about just being all about the graphics?
Pet peeve of mine. And I still love some of the older games like KOTOR and Bioshock 1 where writing was really put first. And I'll still play KOTOR. It looks awful. Really awful. But I love it because it was narrative focused. And granted, that's sort of my thing, but it can also, both of those titles are games that won't go away.
Like, if it's Mario or everything, it's more of it's not story things. It's just where video games are going now. It's kind of like the visuals.
But at that point, you got to look at not so much the video game industry, but the market itself, the generation that's there. How intelligent or how stupid is the generation playing the games? That's a big part of it. That's how marketing looks at it. You know, it's not so much EA, it's not them. It's that they're looking at who's buying their games. Why are they buying Halo? Are they buying Halo for a story, or are they buying Halo just to clobber someone? You know, is it the same audience that's buying Madden? Does Madden care about stories? No, they're just there to play out a season. So is it the same audience? It could be. That's why they could be simplifying the games down. Because after Sunday Night Football, they may not want to play Madden, but they'll play a Halo clone where there's no story to it, and they'll just sit there and play that. And when they look at it too, are everyone playing story mode of Halo, or are they playing combined play? And then it's like if multiple play is playing more than story mode, they're going to make games that don't have story and it's just play, just so they can get better at playing multiplayer.
So I will say that I actually don't think that games are going exclusively to graphics because of games like Uncharted, The Last of Us. You can watch God of War has developed, evolved ourselves into something that's more story-driven. The industry is just wider. It's much wider than when we were younger. Now you have games that do provide, Ethan Carter is basically only a story game. And then you still have, even Battlefield, you still have, so you've got games that are story-driven, games that have both, games, it's just so wide. And I honestly don't worry, because I actually was worried the opposite. I was worried we were only getting the walking simulators.
Like
that were just
1886.
here's just a visual area for you to walk. Exactly, right? And we've kind of balanced a little bit now, and kind of given, even Battlefront 2 has both, has a okay story mode, but has multiplayer. So I feel like it's a little more tame. So I'm personally not. There is a question in the back before we get out of here.
Hi, this question is mainly for Eric. Since you worked on EverQuest and stuff, I'm like a pretty big MMO junkie. So, what's your opinion on MMOs today? As someone who's working on that.
All right.
And also, secondly, what's your opinion on owning EverQuest these days?
Wait, go ahead and start the second question.
What's your opinion on Daybreak with EverQuest?
All right, so I'll be honest and answer both of those. Okay, so the MMO industry to me right now is stale as hell. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, so you have A, World of Warcraft, and B, everything else. I don't like that mentality because everyone wants to be the next World of Warcraft. I'm like, you can't. It's impossible. Okay, if you can dethrone EverQuest, that means your shit's good. Because let's be honest. Let's see, Ultima Online, killed by Sony. We destroyed Ultima Online. Astron's Call, well, we destroyed them too. Dark Ages and Camelot, we destroyed them as well. Now, ironically, then it comes along this company called Blizzard. Okay, we're gonna put out this MMO. We at Sony were like, you guys that did StarCraft, come on, get out of here, that's not real. And then the fact that they knocked us completely off our throne. There's nothing to touch World of Warcraft at this point. So stop trying. So if you want to make an MMO at this point, this is what I suggest. Make a altered timeline-based historical MMO. That would be different. Maybe make an MMO about the Chinese mythology history. That would be different. Something that engages players on a different level. I'm so sick of this stale approach. Just like, well, we're going to put out Neverwinter Nights and we're going to compete with World. No, you're not. Just stop. If you want to make a good MMO, engage the players on a level they've never been engaged before. Let's say, I don't know, what would be another good, a cyberpunk MMO. That would be cool. So right now, unless something unique and something different comes out, you might as well forget it. There's only one king in the castle right now, and that's World of Warcraft. And in regards to Daybreak, okay, the only reason I'm going to rip them really bad at this point, because I saw EverQuest Next as maybe a breath of fresh air, to a degree. Because, I mean, mixing Minecraft with World of Warcraft on colorful sprites, it was kind of a cool idea. It really was. I thought EverQuest Next could have been something interesting. The problem is they put so much money into that H1Z1 game. Why? Okay, I understand esports is popular. Okay, I understand it's a very big thing. We're trying to wrap it up. Sorry. But if you're going to be a viable studio in today's economics, the first thing you need to do is do one of two things. Either destroy EverQuest completely, bury the game, set it on fire, move on, or What you do is you basically do what they haven't done yet. Bring EverQuest Online Adventures back. Make it available for PlayStation 4, Xbox, and PC. And I guarantee you that game would bring back the magic that EverQuest once was. Until then, Daybreak needs to get a life.
All right, yeah, thanks guys. Next panel's loading in.